Have you ever overreacted or had something trigger you that sometimes you don't even know what triggered you and you just get this explosive reaction, or you act in a certain way, or maybe you say something? If that's ever happened to you, then this video is for you, because what I want to do is I want to share with you things that I have done to actually prevent that from happening, because you actually give your power away when that happens. So I want to share a story with you. And I've talked about this in my past videos because it's a big part of my my conditioning that I had earlier in my life. So I had a business with my brother. He passes away, and then all of a sudden we're in lawsuits, and I had to deal with a bunch of stuff, right? And one of those lawsuits was another silent partner that came into the business. So I share the story with you because what happened was that partner wanted to be part of the business. They never were there before, and all of a sudden I'm in business with this other person that really had no understanding of the business, right? And this person, for some odd reason, they just triggered me. If it was what they said, if it was how they looked, if it was how they breathed, and then I would overreact, I would explode. And then that's what actually part of it got us into some legal matters. And I really didn't understand, like, why did I just blow up on this person? And then later I regretted it, or I yelled, or I said something. And then one day I was sitting by myself and I realized it was all this grief that I had when my brother passed away, all these emotions that I had built up inside me. And basically that person was triggering it. There was some correlation, but it really, what it was a opportunity for the outlet of emotions to come out. So if you get triggered easily, it's because you have suppressed or built up emotions that you haven't released. And whatever that trigger is, sometimes you don't even know what it is, right? I mean, it could be something with someone, how they said, how they looked that morning. They could have just cut you off on the road, and you just let it out, right? But what happens is that's actually an opportunity. What I figured and what I found out was that person that was triggering me with my emotions, they were helping me. They were helping me to identify that I had suppressed emotions from when my brother passed away that I never released, right? So that was a opportunity for me to be able to really sit with that and really grieve, right? And then let those emotions out. Now, if you get triggered very easily, what you have to realize, it's not that situation, it's not that person that's actually the problem, right? It's actually they're helping you to be able to identify, hey, there's something inside of you that you have to release, right? And there's multiple ways you can do this. For me, what I have found, well, first is I went to counseling, right? And that talk therapy where you talk it out. That somewhat helps. But what happened to me the very first time I went to a counselor, I was probably like in my mid-20s. The first thing is I sat down, he asked me what happened, and I just cried, man. I just cried and just let it out. I had no idea why, right? But then what I figured out was that was a safe space for me, right? I didn't have the pressures of the business, of the family, of my employees. That was just a safe place for me just to let it out. I didn't understand why. I was actually just talking to him, and I'm like, I don't know why I have all these tears coming out. Why am I just... And that was the moment that I realized that we all, over time and over several events, we get emotions that we aren't allowed to express, or we just don't know how to express. For myself, growing up, I was grown up in a very negative reinforcement family, you can call it, right? I mean, it was always negative in the ways of, if you do this, this is going to happen, right? Sometimes to some levels to very high extreme. Now, what that did for me is it didn't allow me to express my emotions, because we just didn't know how to deal with emotions, right? So what happens in your childhood when you experience certain things, your emotions get bottled up because you don't know how to express them, right? And that becomes over time, you can imagine, you can think about it like a Coca-Cola bottle, right? Or something that's carbonated, right? Where you kind of shake it up and then you build all this pressure up, like a bottle of champagne, right? And then all of a sudden you pop the cork and poof, it blows up, right? And that's that trigger, right? That was that trigger that was triggering me to blow up. And then I would shove it back down, right? And then I would shake it some more because something else happens, right? And then I'll pop that cork out, and then poof, it'll blow up again. So this happens through our lives nonstop. For me, what I realized was that I would feel the sensation in my body right before I was about to blow up, say something. My extremities would get ice cold, and I would feel tightness in my chest, right? So that's the sign, right, that you're being triggered. You can use that, right, as a sign to kind of take a step back, take a few deep breaths if you want to count up to 10, and then before you react. So if you're being triggered by something, you want to actually realize that that person or the thing or the event is actually doing you a favor, right? That person that was triggering me after my brother passed away, they were actually giving me a sign that, hey, you have certain things that you haven't dealt with internally, right? Because, it's said that your outside reality is a mirror of your inside world. And that's 100% true from what I have experienced. Sometimes it's very hard to understand that because we think, that the world just happens, right? That this happens and that's it, right? But in actuality, the world is going to be the way the world is going to be, but what we can control is how we react to it, right? And it's actually what we experience. It's just a mirror image of what we have inside. So if you have a lot of emotions inside, if it's a lot of anger, sadness, whatever it is, everything that you experience throughout the day is going to be directly correlated for that, right? I mean, if this has ever happened to you, but I know, maybe, you're possibly feeling sad or anger. I know it's happened to me, and it's a beautiful day outside. No matter what I do, right, that day still seems shitty, right? It happens, right? I mean, it happens, right? No matter what you do, you still feel like shit, right? Now, we have to really take that in consideration because what it is, it's a reflection of us inside. So we have to spend time with ourselves. And that's something that, for me growing up, I never really dealt with it, right? Because it just wasn't part of something that we learned, right? They call it self-love, self-maintenance, whatever you want to call it, because we don't get allowed to express our full emotions when we're young, right? So then as we develop our ego, right, our persona, our image that we want to, show to the world, then that becomes one of our beliefs of that, what? I'm not supposed to express my emotions, right? I want to please everybody else, outside of me, right? And that happens because you're growing up. And who do you want to please? Everybody outside you, right? You want to please your parents, your siblings, your friends. When you start going to high school, elementary school, your teachers, right? So you're somewhat pleasing everybody. So that becomes a part of your belief. And then you don't fully express yourself, right? That's why you get triggered so easily. It's because we have all these, positive, negative emotions, whatever they may be, and they'll just get triggered. And of course, the ones that, we don't like to get triggered when they do is our negative emotions, right? So one of the best ways that I have found, just like my first experience and my first, therapy session, like in my mid-20s, and I waited way too long to do that, but is just a release, right? And what I mean by that is there's a couple ways to do it. The best way that I have realized over the years, and there's a lot of types of therapies, right? But just if you do sitting meditation, right? And there's a lot of ways you can do it, but really just to sit with it in quiet, right? Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, and just feel whatever comes across, right? And this is where you start feeling your emotions, right? And the release is going to happen when, you might just start crying. you might feel anger, you might feel grief, right? You may feel sadness, whatever that is, and you just have to just let it go. Don't attach yourself to it. But just know, if you're being triggered by some sort of external event, right? For me anyway, it's that I have some sort of suppressed emotion, some sort of experience that I just have to let it out. For me, I've been to talk therapy. I've done all kinds of, timeline regression. I've done hypnotherapy. I've done CBT, cognitive behavior therapy. And for me, the best release that I have is just sit with it and just let those emotions come out, right? Don't attach yourself to it. So if you get triggered, whatever it's triggering, that's just giving you a sign that you have something inside that you have to release, right? And sometimes you can do it alone. Sometimes you might need some guidance, to do it. But if you get triggered, just know you have something that you unresolved within yourself, right? Just don't get attached to it, right? For many years, I was trying to figure out, I have all these unresolved issues, and we tend to do, right? But what I want to let you aware of, that a lot of those unresolved issues are only in our mind, right? Like, it was only our perception at the time. That is very important to solve, but we definitely want to be able to release our emotions. That way we don't get triggered. And one of the biggest things that I've learned about being triggered is when you get triggered and then you release it, right? Like, you overreact, you're actually giving your power away to somebody else, right? And that's very powerful to understand. So if someone else triggers you and you just react, right, then you're giving the power away to the other person, right? So, and you want to stay in control, right? And you want to be present with yourself. And one of the best ways is just to do a sitting meditation, quiet. If you've never done meditation, really the point of it is just to sit with yourself. Sometimes it's very uncomfortable in the beginning. So if you found this video useful, make sure you subscribe and put in the comments down below what are your triggers, right? Or what have you done to overcome not overreacting when you're triggered. Thanks for watching. And again, I hope you found this useful, and I will see you in the next video.